October 25th, 1994, Union, South Carolina. A young mother makes a desperate call to 911. She's hysterical, panicked, screaming that her two little boys have been kidnapped by a black man who carjacked her at a stoplight. The town mobilizes instantly. Search teams, FBI agents, national media attention. It was every parent's nightmare. At least, that's how it started. A sobbing mother, appearing on national television, begging for the safe return of her children. She was young, attractive, middle America's image of a struggling mother. And when Susan Smith cried on television, big dramatic sobs. Holding up photos of her missing boys, America felt it. But all of it, every single tear, was a lie. What the world didn't know is that Susan already knew where her children were. They were at the bottom of a lake. This is the story of a mother who drowned her own sons, then stood in front of the world and pretended to care. I'm Sidney Smith, and this is Murderous Podcast. And this week's murderess is Susan Smith. In episode 77, The Lie That Sank Everything. Union, South Carolina. Quiet, simple, unassuming. The kind of town where folks wave when they pass you on the road. And everyone knows everyone else's business, except the kind that hides behind closed doors. Now, a lot of us listening to this podcast may not know about that life or that type of life. I, growing up in a small 2 traffic light town such as Carjacked, Michigan, can appreciate this short introduction to Union, South Carolina, because it is just like that. There's a great love for growing up in that type of thing, but the one thing you always talk about is everyone knows everyone's business. That's a thing you're always consumed by when you're growing up there and you can't wait to get the hell out of there. Now, Susan Smith was born here in 1971. And on the surface, her life looked average. Small town, Southern, picture book normal. But that picture was torn early. When she was 6 years old, her father died by suicide. Not long after, her mother remarried a man named Beverly Russell. He was a respected member of the Christian Coalition, church-going, clean-cut, trusted. And he molested Susan. Now think about that. A child losing her father, then being abused by the man who steps into his place. That's not just trauma. That's a blueprint for emotional collapse. And it followed her into everything. In school, Susan was the type of girl who could charm a room but crack in private. She wore the smile well. She dated, joined clubs. She even worked part-time at a grocery store. But under that performative normalcy, she was a live wire. She attempted suicide multiple times before she even graduated high school. And people knew, at least parts of it. But no one stepped in. No one stopped the spiral. She had learned to suffer beautifully. And that's a dangerous skill for a woman. And I would say for anyone. But for this story, a dangerous skill for a woman who would later manipulate an entire nation. She married David Smith in her early 20s. He was sweet, steady, the type of guy who worked hard and meant well. But that's not what Susan wanted. And I mean, look, this is the part where I have to say something not as a narrator, but as a human. Some people chase stability. Some people run from it. Susan was a runner. And that's true for a lot of us. I might even throw myself into that. I think a lot of times when you are growing up in not the best situation, obviously you're going to take what you've been taught. And hopefully if someone's able to step in or see something in you or you're able to find some example, you turn from a person who runs into someone who seeks something stable. She had 2 children in less than 3 years, Michael and Alex. Beautiful boys, the kind of children that light up a room. And from every outside account, Susan loved them. But love isn't always the same as want. And that's true. It's not. I mean, I think you have to eventually grow up to understand the difference and which one is more important. Her marriage to David was strained from the beginning. There were financial issues, tension over parenting, and more than anything, Susan wanted out. She started having affairs, not just one, but multiple, with coworkers, bosses. She wasn't subtle about it either. And then came Tom Finley. Tom was younger, richer. His father owned the company Susan worked for. He wasn't looking for commitment, and Susan didn't care. She saw Tom as a ladder, a way up and out, a new life, a different identity. But Tom didn't want her. He made it clear in a letter. Yes, an actual letter that came out in court, that he could never be a father to someone else's children, that her baggage was too heavy for the future he wanted. And that broke something in her. Have you ever seen someone unravel quietly? Like they're still smiling, still showing up to work, still playing the part, but behind their eyes, you know something's burning. That was Susan. October 24th, 1994. It was cool outside. Autumn had rolled into Union with that hush it always brings. Susan buckled her boys into the back seat. Michael in his car seat, Alex beside him. She told them they were going to go for a drive. She passed a stoplight, then another. She turned off the main road, and she drove toward Lake John D. Long. Now, let me take a quick second here, because when I was looking back on this story, putting this one together, obviously we all saw this on the news when we were younger, not really taking or grasping everything, because we were, so a lot of us didn't even have kids of our own at this time. But as you get older and you revisit it, you start to pick up things along the way that you weren't able to really realize before. And one of the things with this one, and as I read here, is just the drive. Now, I don't know how long this drive is, but I will ask, how long does a drive need to be when you're getting ready to commit an act like this, where you don't decide not to do what she ended up doing? It's just a thought that crossed my mind and kind of stuck with me. How long or how short does a drive have to be before you say, you know what, I can't do this, not to my own kids? So imagine the quiet, the way the wind rustles through the trees of the water, the way the road narrows, like it's leading somewhere it shouldn't, the way 2 children sit in the back seat, probably tired, maybe singing, maybe playing with the edge of a seatbelt, not knowing, not suspecting. Susan put the car in neutral. She got out, and she let it roll forward. Michael was 3. Alex was 14 months old. And they were awake. She stood and watched that car slide slowly into the dark. Watched the water creep up the windows. Watched the bubbles rise. watched until the tail lights disappeared. And then she simply walked away. She made it to a stranger's house and banged on their door, breathless. She told them she'd been carjacked by a black man at a stoplight. He had forced her out of the car and driven off with her babies inside. She gave police a detailed description: tall, medium build, wearing a knit cap. She was sobbing, she was shaking, and everyone believed her. Because how could a mother lie about something like that? For 9 days, Susan Smith was America's grieving mother. The nation prayed. The news ran 24/7 coverage. There were candlelight vigils, search parties, posters. Celebrities shared photos. A composite sketch of the suspect was broadcast nationwide. And Susan? She held hands. She cried on cue. She hugged people in the crowd. And I'll be real with you. This is where it starts to feel like a different kind of evil. Not just the act itself, but the theater, the pretend, the make-believe of it all. The manipulation. The sheer confidence in her ability to fool the entire world. Now I'm going to share something else with you guys. You wouldn't know because unless you're a fan and you watched anything else I've ever done, stand up, my sketches, my films, anything else, my comedy special, you wouldn't know I'm an African-American man. And even though I was young when this happened, there's one thing I remember then and there's one thing I remember today, and it's the same thing. That Black people, African-American people were so upset with this story and with how easy it was for her to just point at a make-believe African-American male and that all of this came from it. But the cracks were showing. Her story changed in small ways. Her affect was off. Investigators started doubling her timeline. She failed a polygraph. And then, on November 3rd, Susan Smith confessed. She told the police what she had done, led them to the lake, and divers recovered the car from 18 feet of water, with Michael and Alex still strapped in. That trial was brutal. The defense leaned hard into Susan's history, abuse, depression, suicidal ideation. They said she believed death would spare her sons from a lifetime of dysfunction and instability, that it was a distorted mercy. How? I'm not a defense attorney. I'm not an attorney at all. And I know everyone deserves a defense, so I'm not even going to go down that road and argue the fact that this woman deserves nothing of the sort. But you couldn't come up with something else better than that? Anything would have been better than I killed my kids. It was a distorted mercy to save them from a lifetime of dysfunction and instability. I don't know how you write that down on paper, let alone stand in a courtroom and say anything close to that. But the prosecution painted a clearer picture. Susan killed her sons because they were in the way. Because Tom Finley didn't want to be a stepfather. Because she thought without them, she could finally live the life she believed she deserved. Now, I've never met Tom Finley, but I have been a young man And I've been a young man with some promise. And I can tell you something that I can almost lay, if I had $1 to bet, I'd bet 99 cents of it. Most young men will tell you anything they got to tell you to get what they want. And I myself have never broken up with a woman with a letter, but any man that will break up with a woman with a letter doesn't have the courage of anything. So there's no way that this plan would have ever worked, even if she had gotten away with it. Susan ended up being sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. And here's where we are now today. As of this recording on March 28th, 2025, Susan Smith is eligible for parole, but no official decision has been released. And if she has seen the board, there's been no indication that she's going anywhere. Because some lies don't just break trust, they shatter it. She blamed her pain. She blamed her past. But in the end, Susan Smith made a choice. While the world prayed for Michael and Alex, she let them drown. Some lies are so big, so monstrous, that even the truth can't fully erase them. Susan Smith's story isn't just about a mother who killed her children. It's about performance. It's about the mask people wear to survive or to deceive. And the disturbing truth about how much we want to believe them. Because sometimes the lie feels safer than what's real. She manipulated an entire country. And for a little while, we all believed her. If this one sat heavy with you, you're not alone. Susan Smith didn't just commit murder. She made the world believe she was the victim. So tell me, did you ever believe her? Do you think she was mentally unraveling? Or was she always in control? I want to hear your verdict. DM me, drop a voice note, or tag me in your thoughts. You already know. You are my co-host out there. And I'll be reading some of your takes on the next episode of Murderers Podcast. Sources for this episode include trial transcripts, contemporary reporting from the state and CNN, archival interviews, and official records from the South Carolina Department of Corrections. A full list of sources is available in the show notes. Murderers Podcast is written and hosted by myself, Sidney Smith. Music and editing, as well as production by Laugh Local Network Studios. This is a Laugh Local Network production. New episodes released weekly.